But this fusion of cybernetics and ecology was going to lead to far more than just a new idea of nature, for out of it was about to come a new organising principle for human society as well. It would be a vision of a new kind of world, one without the authoritarian exercise of power and the old political hierarchies, a vision that was different from past ideologies, because it mirrored how order was created in nature. The man behind it was a utopian visionary who had worked as an engineer in the US military. He was called Buckminster Fuller. "I will make my life an experiment," he said, "to search for the principles that govern the universe." Fuller had invented a radically new kind of structure that was based on the underlying system of order in nature. It was called a geodesic dome. It was very simple but incredibly strong. Giant geodesic domes were built to house the radar installations for America's early warning system in the Arctic.
These are what we call geodesic radomes, and they are designed to protect very powerful and important apparatus from the great storms of nature. We think of structures as being something very powerful, but these are very delicate. Yet they've been through about 10 years of the most formidable conditions in the Arctic that any structures have ever had to stand. But I'm not a dome salesman. I'm an explorer in structures. I'm interested in the fundamental principles by which nature holds her shapes together.
Fuller's geodesic domes imitated the idea of the ecosystem. Each tiny strut was weak, but when thousands were joined to form a giant interconnecting web, they became strong and stable. Fuller believed that this principle of copying nature could be applied not just to structures, but to creating new systems to manage societies. But in order to do this, Fuller realized that there was going to have to be a conceptual shift in the way human beings saw their position in the world. Instead of seeing themselves as members of nations or classes or hierarchies of power, people should instead see themselves as equal members of a global system. To persuade them, Fuller used the image of the spacecraft that NASA had built to take Americans to the moon. NASA had employed ecologists to help design a closed system for the astronauts inside the cabin. It was constantly monitored by computers to keep it in perfect balance. And in 1964, Fuller wrote a manifesto called the Operating Manual for Spaceship Earth. It said that the world should be seen as one giant spaceship, and that all human beings should try and manage that global system so it was kept in a perfect balance, just like the tiny cabin of the spacecraft.
And he would say in his lectures, like, "You guys wonder what it's like to be an astronaut. Well, I can tell you, you are an astronaut. We are all astronauts on board spaceship Earth." So here's an image of the Earth suddenly being like a spaceship, like a closed ecosystem, in which you would live in strict balance. Now notice that suddenly you are not in the center anymore. The spaceship is in the center. Meaning that you start de-emphasizing the importance of the individual human being because you're concerned about the welfare of the system, not for the individual.
There was a threat, though, to this new vision, Fuller said. It was politicians. Because politicians believed that they could control the system. And that always led to struggles for power, and out of that came wars. Instead, the system should be allowed to find its own natural order, and there would be no need for hierarchies and power any longer.
If man is going to stay on board our spaceship Earth, it can't be done by politics, because politics is so inadequate. And this cannot be commanded by politics, because the politician doesn't know about such a thing. He has to go on what have you, which is the kind of design he now has. So all he can do is give you war.
And Fuller's ideas caught the imagination of a generation who had become disillusioned with politics. The counterculture had emerged after the student movement had failed to change the structure of power in America. Between 1967 and 1971, over 500,000 Americans left the cities and set out to create thousands of experimental communities. It was one of the biggest migrations in American history. They used Buckminster Fuller's geodesic domes to build their new homes. But more than that, they adopted his cybernetic ideas as their organizing principle. The communes deliberately had no hierarchy of control or authority. Instead, the central idea was that everyone should see themselves as part of a system, a distributed network that could stabilize itself, just like the ecosystems in nature. In one of the most influential communes, called Synergia, this cybernetic theory was called ecotechnics.
We were trying to create a society based on understanding ecosystems, a society of interrelationship and balance, a man-machine biological system working in combination. And that was sort of our ideal with what we called ecotechnics. The idea of ecotechnics is simply that you are a part of the system, in which there would be less, if not no hierarchy at all.
In the communes, anything that smacked of politics was forbidden. No coalitions or alliances with others in the group were permitted. Instead, individuals dealt with each other one-to-one in group sessions, in which they told each other how they were feeling about each other.
Well, Richard, I don't know if I want you to reach me. Because I'm afraid. I'd like you to try to reach me. I don't know whether I'd like you to reach me.
They remained free individuals. Yet at the same time, through this system of feedback, the group would be stable.
We didn't use the word system, but we very much thought of the whole group, of ourselves, as all connected. That there was a group sense, there was a group feeling. That was our whole purpose, was to be fully connected to each other and to have this group sense of the organism of many who act as one. That's part of what it meant.
Switch. 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 Switch.
It would be like a dance where we're creating a new kind of society, freeing each person to be fully themselves in the group. But we're all affecting each other at all times, like an organism of many who act as one.
And there was another group of visionaries in California who believed that the communes were only a prototype for a self-organizing society built on a global scale. They were the engineers who were inventing the new computer technologies on the West Coast. And the way that they were going to develop these technologies would be shaped by this vision of a natural order that combined humans and machines. At the end of 1968, a group of computer pioneers took a conscious decision. They would give up developing large mainframes. Instead, they would create a way of linking small, personal computers in networks.
Remain seated when I get introduced, and the fact that I'm going to come to you mostly through this medium here for the rest of the show.
And in a dramatic demonstration, they showed how this could be done. It included all the necessary elements, even the computer mouse.
You can see the devices that I'm using. I use 3, and they're not all standard. We have a pointing device called a mouse, a standard keyboard, and a special key set we have here. Now, computer, do the automatic switching that'll bring in a camera. Hi, Bill. That's great. Now we're connected. Audio, you can see my work, you can point at it, and I can see your face, and we can talk.
These pioneers believed that in the future, computer networks would allow you to create the very kind of society that was being developed in the communes, but on a global scale. everyone could be free as individuals, not dominated any longer by old hierarchies or controlled politically. Instead, they would be linked together in a global system that would find its own natural order. It would do it through the feedback of information between millions of people on their personal computers. The demonstration was filmed by one of the prophets of this vision. He was a leader of the commune movement called Stuart Brand.
They felt like computers had liberated them, and they were going to use computers, they were going to enable computers to liberate society, civilization, everybody.
I can accept file control, and I've already accepted file referencing.
That computers were going to save the world, and these guys were going to make sure they could. It was going to be a power to the people in a very direct sense. And that was an early iteration of the internet and of Google and all of that. That this was a vast network that was self-correcting.